Jenny, thank you so much for being here today. I know you had your earnings call last night.
I did.
Yesterday, you did your earnings call last night.
I missed your great evening because of that.
No, but it's real dedication to this summit and to this community that you go to the trouble to fly out here to be for this.
Well, I was listening to the last answer, and she said it was her dream to come back. I'm thinking it's probably their nightmare that I'm back every year.
No, everyone's delighted. In fact, I'd have to check this with Patty. My understanding is this is a slot that traditionally has been reserved for Carol Loomis and Warren Buffett. So, which is a heavy burden on both of us.
Which one of us is
I think I'm Carol, and I think you're Warren. So I have to be tough, and you have to be oracular.
Okay.
You're ready.
All right.
So first of all, let's talk about the earnings. Clear beat of the street's expectations, and while revenues were down, it was just a tiny bit, 30 million or 40 million or so on $19 billion. Now you've had 17, 18 quarters of downward sloping revenues.
Thanks for repeating that, Alan.
I'm sorry. I'm Carol Loomis. I gotta play my role here. So 18 quarters, I don't mean to repeat it again, of downward sloping revenue, but almost flat, this one. Does that mean we've reached the turn, that IBM is now ready after 4.5 years to become a growth company?
Yeah. Our goal is always to do things that are essential for the world. And so yesterday's in our earnings, as you said, were essentially flat. But I feel like this group has been with me through this whole transformation because it's been a number of years, and every year I've talked a bit about it. And really, when I look at the progress, if you guys allow me to say it, I am really proud of 400,000 IBMers who have done what no other tech company's ever done, which is reinvent itself through multiple eras. And we are getting there. And so what we announced last night, as Alan just said, was revenue is essentially flat, improvement from last quarter, and some of the businesses that we've built to help you become digital or cognitive. We've talked about, and I hope we'll talk a little bit about cognitive, artificial intelligence. They're now 40% of IBM, and that would be about $32 billion. And then the other big businesses, things like our technology services business, which is twice the size of its nearest competitor, is growing. And so you're starting to see that impact. So I'm really pleased. And you're starting to now, I feel like we've been together in this. It's now emerging in this era. IBM emerges as a cognitive solutions and a cloud platform company.
These kinds of turnarounds are hard to do. And
well,
your shareholders aren't always patient enough to allow you to do it. But you've been given the rope.
Well, we've talked about this, and I think we've all shared the stories about you've got to do what's right for the long term and stewarding for the long term. And that means placing some big bets. We divested of $8 billion of businesses. I now look back, I've acquired 50 companies, and at the same time invested 6% of R&D every year to get us to this point.
So let's talk about cognitive, which most people know as Watson. And I think everybody understands that it's really smart science. Everybody can see that it's brilliant marketing. But what we've been waiting for is the evidence that it's going to be a big business for IBM.
Yeah.
Can you give us a couple of examples of how Watson and Cognitive are turning into big business propositions?
Well, I don't know if anyone saw 60 Minutes about a week ago. And there was a great segment that I think made it come alive. You know, and for anybody new, this idea of cognitive are the systems that will understand, reason, and learn, like our brains make some decisions on things. And you can train them in natural language, image, and in real domains, like health, like retail, like financial services. And what you would have seen on 60 Minutes was genomics, Watson Genomics, and University of North Carolina. The doctor said, look, we took 1,000 patients through Watson, 1,000 through the doctor. The two of them came up with the same answers, but 30% of the time, Watson found more. And so yesterday, we announced with Quest. So with Quest, the Broad Institute, and Memorial Sloan Kettering, the Cancer Center, this is precision oncology, really for the entire population. So if you have cancer, you can have the tumor and your genetics from normal tissue, your tumor. Quest will do the genetic work, and then if it needs the entire genome, that's where Broad comes in, and Watson will do the analysis for diagnosis and treatment. That reaches really 70% all patients, all of America, actually.
And that's in the field now?
It was announced yesterday, in the field now.
So if you have serious cancer now,
go.
Watson is
Yes,
going to help
yes.
you.
So I am just thrilled. And in fact, we've already been rolling out some of this outside of the United States. And the same doctors who you all, a number of you watched me kind of show this to you years ago. The doctors who've trained it, the institutions that have trained Watson, there are now more patients treated outside the United States than in, and now available to the population.
Is health going to be the principal area where Watson?
No. I listened to a lot of folks out of the banking industry. So we've got Watson for Internet of Things, Watson for Financial Services, for Commerce, for Security. And we just announced for Watson for Financial Services and Risk and Compliance, because it's one of the areas that it is unbelievably difficult for the financial institutions because of the amount of money going into it versus value add, and then the real ability to find what issues are. And so we both
Spot what,
spot
irregularities,
and
misbehavior?
and produce the authentic audit trail around this and be able to prove it. So that too is coming out. So between that, and I was just telling Alan, it'll be tomorrow, an announcement with a big retailer on food safety and work that will be announced between a big retailer and ourselves and a big country for food safety. So these are the things that I think you're going to watch this era do that really, really matter.
Now, you wrote a piece this morning in the Wall Street Journal talking about the difference between artificial intelligence and intelligence augmentation,
Yes.
AI versus IA.
Well,
you think IA is really what we're talking
I
about.
think this is actually a really important point because this topic can sometimes get easily turned sideways. You'll be in a conference, people say, oh no, AI is about replacing people, replacing jobs. And I am so clear that instead of artificial intelligence, and there's a reason we call it cognitive, and my own husband said to me, it doesn't roll off your tongue just right away, and I said, but there's a reason to not call it artificial intelligence. This is about augmenting what man does, and it's man and machine. That's our goal. That's incredibly important. And so that idea is that's why I say augmenting intelligence is really what I think, and it's going to be in every one of your businesses and every decision. I mean, I've been really bold. I think in the next 5 years, every important decision is going to get assisted by this kind of technology, personally and professionally.
It's also going to eliminate a lot of jobs. It may create jobs, but it's going to eliminate, you talk about the banking sector, there are probably vast swaths of people doing simple analytics in banking that won't be necessary in the future, possibly in areas like accounting or how should we think about that?
Yeah, I have some pretty firm views about this. I think if you step back and you look at technology through every era, it has displaced jobs, but it has also created a lot of jobs. And I often remind people, I say, go back and think about, farming. And when farming machinery came around, people did lose jobs, and it put a premium on reading. And then you go on to the industrial age, and you'll remember when factories, that put a premium, and it's what gave rise to community colleges, vocational schools around the world, because it put a premium on mechanical skills that you had to have. So one day we're going to look back, and whatever this era is going to get called, in retrospect, I think, it's going to put a premium on math and science, and not just advanced degrees, across a whole continuum of skills. So I think that's how you have to look at it. So it's going to do more good, but what does it then open up? And it opens up an issue that I think is like front and center to everything in the debate today, which is skills and jobs. And so it's going to put a premium on, and I think we have a big responsibility to help here on moving the skills up.
So you've taken us to politics, which is good, because if Warren was here, he'd be talking about politics.
Differently than I would, though.
Probably differently than you would, and so I'll give you I'll give you your opportunity. I mean, even if what you're saying about jobs is correct, what we've learned in a dramatic way in the last year is there's vast anxiety out there.
Yeah, that's very true.
There's a sense that the system isn't working for people the way it did during most of the post-World War II period. The Democrats came within a hair's breadth of nominating a self-described socialist. You have Donald Trump turning against trade, turning against immigration. What can business leaders like yourself do to restore faith in the system and deal with those obvious feelings of of disgruntlement,
Yeah.
distrust, fear.
I think there is something we can all do, and I think it is a responsibility because when you look at this issue, you called it sort of a backlash. In a macro and a micro dimension, they're different. In the macro, you say things and you look, and all of us that run businesses would go, trade is good. It actually is good. 1 in 5 jobs in America are related to trade. 41 million people. There's many statistics that show this. But when you look on a micro area and you say, but somebody's job is displaced, that's a very different displacement and transition, right? And that's a very difficult thing to deal with. And so I think it does come back to, if I could, in my mind, I think there's 3 big things we can do, because what do you do about it? Because there's opportunities for jobs in this country. There's 5.5 million open jobs. I think 1 million are actually in healthcare even. So what would you do? I think one, all of us, I listen to everybody, big and small businesses. The first one, I think you would prepare our future workforce differently. And we often talk about STEM, and it isn't just this, college degrees, advanced degrees. You would step back and you would train all of our kids coming out of school early in math and science, because there are many of these jobs that they can do without these advanced degrees that apply into this next era.
Can that be done by business?
Yes, it can be done. I am, I will take more than my time. We've each done and have some programs, but we've done something called Pathways to Technology. It's scaling at 100 schools. There's been 100 companies that have helped, and this is high school and community college together. And it is all about being sure that kids come out with skills that are employable. And that is whether it's tech or whether it's retailing or whether you're Boeing or whether, it doesn't matter. You can make it so that those skills are really transferable. We have had super success. It's across 10 states in the United States now. I am really pleased. One of the things that made it through the whole House of Representatives about 3 weeks ago is something called the Perkins Bill. And this is what allows, it's the funding for community colleges. Used to be on per capita in every state. It's now going to say you get your funding based on creating skills that will be hired right now, that are employable. And so this is business and community colleges coming together. So I'm very optimistic about what can be done, public-private. So that's one I would do. The second thing I think we can all do, and it is our responsibility, and I think you talked a little bit about this last night from what I understand with Angela, is reskill and help do education to reskill a workforce. I have to do it because I have to change skills too. Some people, many make it, some can't, but you have to give everybody that opportunity. I even teach every month. I've done it now for 36 consecutive months. I teach a class for the whole company, and there's more than me, of course. I do the first half hour, and then everybody that knows much more comes in. But it's that idea that getting in people's minds in this day and age, you got to keep refreshing your skills. So I think we have an obligation. But my third one, in my mind on this, to help with skills, this is where I take a different view about all these new technologies. I think they will assist people to do jobs that they're a stretch for them. So this is one way to help deal with the transition period, because it is always, even when you transform companies, I always say you can see the beginning and the end. It's always the transitions that are hard. It's almost true with everything in life.
Can you give a good example of that?
Yeah, so a great one would be banking. So Bradesco, one of the biggest banks down in Brazil, in their call center, they're now handling 59 different financial products. Watson does Portuguese, all dialects, and he's helping the agents deal with the complexity of all these products. So they can stretch into jobs they probably couldn't have otherwise done.
And Watson doesn't answer the question, but it provides the agent with the information.
Sometimes it's an answer, sometimes it's more information to help them. So I really think this idea of prepare the future, reskill, and then assist is a way to positively address this issue. It's a very real issue.
I want to open it up for questions, so if you have a question, get ready, and there's some people with microphones and paddles out there. But let me ask you, before I do, you hear either of the candidates dealing adequately with that education issue you just talked about?
I think we all have to be stronger advocates on this topic. I think it deserves far more focus, because I think it is the root answer to this. And so I think this is something that after the election, we get down to it. One of the best things you can do, I did write another one of these sort of op-ed things, is Now, the Senate has to pass that Perkins Act I was mentioning. So these are the kinds of things that I think have to move
Are you
forward.
supporting a candidate in the presidential election?
I'm certainly voting,
Yeah.
but what I would, this is actually a really important, I knew you were going to answer, I figured you would ask me that question, but I think this is an important thing. I'd like to share my sort of position about this, that we operate in 170 countries, and at 105 years old, I can't tell you how many countless elections we have endured and been through. And even currently, whether it was the UK, whether it was Canada, whether Australia, it doesn't matter where it was, Brazil. And so I feel the right way to approach this as a company is, for us, is we don't pick candidates, but we do pick positions and advocate strongly for those positions. And feel and been really consistent about those positions around the world. And to me, the three that I hold dearest are, the one is to promote open markets. I do believe, and therefore I'm a strong supporter about TPP and the value.
Which neither candidate is supporting.
Which I could come back to on that. The second one is strong support for diversity and equality. And for many of us, that's sort of like been in our soul for a long time. I am very proud. I mean, IBM in the 1950s, when America would have been equal but separated, now my predecessors, right? I mean, at that point had written a letter that said no, 11 years before the Civil Rights Amendment, that we would have equal pay and equal opportunity, right? So I think, we can talk about those things somewhat more easily here, but around the world, that advocating. And so like the positions we took with LGBT, or what we have taken around a number of these issues, genomic testing as an example, not to have it influence your hiring and that kind of thing. And then the third area is this belief, which gets back around to the question you asked a second ago, that science really does promote progress in every country. So therefore, you got to advocate not only education, but I mean, it is science that's going to solve these issues for development of all of our countries. And even America, okay, we're developed, but there's an aged population that we're going to have to deal with for a very much longer lifetime. So there are many issues, the environment, whether it's the population, health. So those are the three things.
But you're not taking that to a candidate.
Those are the three. No, I advocate my positions to either candidate.
Questions? I have.
Oh.
Okay.
Good morning, Jenny. Kate Gutman, UPS. Wanted to ask you, first of all, with a comment, I commend you for your bravery to transform the organization despite some tough earnings calls and quarters, something that a lot of businesses need to do to really address the market. Do you think you received any additional scrutiny or pressure because you were a female CEO going through that time?
Oh, that's a great question. I maybe will only be able to answer that in revisionist history. I think mostly, though, I think the challenge for all of us that have existing companies that have to reinvent them amongst this landscape, because there are some different things about this point in time, right? It's the pace. I've talked about this before. The number of transitions in technology, the number and the pace, very fast. Lloyd was up here. There is the issue about there's a lot of money looking for places to go, low interest rates, so there's lots of competition caused by that. You've got a global environment that dollar has been stronger than it's ever been in its time before, but as well you have competition that knows no boundary. So I think what is perhaps underestimated is, undervalued is what it takes to transform a company. And like everyone, many in this room, either starting or are doing one, and then to do it multiple times. But that, to me, is what makes this country great, and it's what makes this optimism that you can do it and you come through it. And that's, I think, to me, the part that I feel strongest about to be recognized.
Probably also helps to have Warren Buffett in your stock and standing behind you.
Oh, look, Warren is a great leader and a great investor, but all investors that value what we are, right? I mean, what I would say, we are, unlike other companies, some are high growth, we are high value. Yeah. So we are more about moving to higher value, and it is less to us about the growth. If it was about growth, I wouldn't have sold $8 billion of businesses. So that's more what it is.
Well, Jenny, I make a poor Carol Loomis, but you do a really good job as Warren Buffett.
Oh,
so
that's
thanks,
a very nice
very
compliment. All right. Thank you, guys.